Michael, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
I wanted to begin with Jung and specifically about some of the biggest misconceptions that people have, or perhaps our wider community has about Jung, because there's been a resurgence of Jungian ideas and Jungian principles across social media. That's certainly where I first got to know him and started reading his books. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you feel that people hold about Jung?
Well, the word is, well, a couple of things. In his early career, he had some involvement with the Germans before the whole thing started up, before the Holocaust started. And some people accuse him of being a Nazi sympathizer. And the story, who knows the truth of any of this stuff? And what he writes is that when he began to realize what was happening and who he was talking to, he said he got out of it right away. And he began to try to warn people what was occurring. So that's one thing. I think the majority, that's a history a lot of people don't know about.
Mm.
I think many people in the public and also professionals would say it's all mystical stuff. It's all very mystical. The stuff on alchemy, mythology. You can tell me life is shaped by mythology, life follows these patterns, these mythical patterns. Come on. And while a lot of people won't admit it, we're still very much oriented by Freudian theory. And by the way, I have training in both. I have official training. An official Jungian psychoanalyst trained in New York, and I've trained unofficially with Freudian. So I know both and I care about both very much. But a lot of therapy is still organized around trauma, it should be more around defense mechanism. But a lot of people have moved away from Jung. Like in university, you don't find it because they say, yeah, it's all pie in the sky stuff. And the other thing, look, I teach a lot of different Jung institutes, nationally and internationally. And it has moved away more and more from trauma theory, which I think it needs to bring back. Remember, there was a split, I think around 1916, Freud and Jung. Freud asked Jung to be the heir apparent. I don't know if you know that part. He was to be the heir apparent to the whole Freudian movement.
Mm.
And he was a great Freudian analyst in the beginning. And when Freud said, look, you've got to hold to the sexual theory, Jung said, I don't think so. It's got to be more than that. And then Jung had the courage to publish his book in 1916, Symbols of Transformation, and he knew that was going to be the kiss of death between he and Freud. And Freud said, well, obviously, you're out of the fold because you're not holding to the sex theory. And Jung had a much bigger view of things. Sexuality is one of many instincts we have. It's a big one, of course. It drives a lot of behavior and movie and money and professions and all that stuff. But it wasn't the motive force for humanity, for culture and all that. So when Jung began his studies, like looking into mythology, looking into sexual symbolism, for instance, I mean, Japanese erotic art is very powerful. It's not sexy at all. It's erotic art. And he would realize when you see two people coming together, it was a symbol. It was a symbol of a union. And Jung was interested. Okay, what say you dream of somebody, a partner, whatever, you're having some interaction with, sexual, sensual, romantic, whatever. He said, well, okay, let's look at who these two people are psychologically. What are you joining with? What aspect of life are you joining with? And for some, it was very creative. I think it's brilliant what he did with that. Other people say, well, it's too light. It's kind of light. Because I don't know if Jung, well, look, Jung was a pioneer. He was studying symbolism. He was studying this stuff of archetypes, which we're going to get into today. I don't know if the time he was working, I don't know if he had enough time to really look at the power of symbols and archetypes to structure life and to structure humanity. I mean, if one was to say what Freud did, Freud was right in a lot of ways. In the time he was doing his stuff, sex was the biggest issue, was repression.
Yeah,
Not big, but it was a major issue.
yeah.
It was all over. It was all underground for everybody, for the cultures. And so he put his hand on the zeitgeist. Jung was taking a different thinking. What is it? What are these eternal images in us? These instincts that have driven humanity from the beginning of time, from instinct for protection, instinct to mate, instinct for protection, self-preservation, instinct to create art, and whatever it might be. These are universals, and that took him into the world of studying universal. I think if he was alive more today, I think going to sound funny to say, I think we're picking up on a lot of what he would have done today because we're looking at the power of these things, the sustaining power of an image to literally shape a life.
Mm.
Come on, an image, it's not just the image. It's the image is arising out of a field, Tom. Every There's a feel for everything, a feel for midlife. You're a younger man, I'm an older man. My son's probably more around your age. And there's a stage of life, when you're in your 30s or whatever, you're building in the outer world. You're building relationships, building a family. I watched my boy with, a 3.5-year-old son and a 5-month-old daughter. And that's his life. That's the major part of his life, as it
Kind of
needs to
has to be,
be.
right?
It has to be. And that's archetypal. At my stage, I'm 72 now. That's behind me. My work is now appreciating him as a young man, as a father, as a husband, being there to offer whatever I can to the grandchildren. So the point is that what I'm doing at this age, what you're doing, what my son's doing at that age, is not just personal. The way you go about it may be personal, but you realize there's a field, like a magnetic field, that when you hit that stage, whether you realize it or not, the power of that field, the impetus of that field, the proclivity of that field is going to start working. It's going to start working, and it has a power over us for good and for bad. And when Jung made the comment about Nazi Germany, he said, "Man, there's something happening here that's going to affect the world to the end of time." He was talking about the power of an archetype that was constellated, not only the abuse, the horror, which is otherworldly,
Mm.
which we will never forget. But he was saying something was causing that. You see what I'm saying? That there was something in this that was creating all of that we saw, all of the horror. So all of the effects, all of the turbulence, all of the horrors in the world happening were coming from the deep unconscious, that they were already, here's a key word, prefigured. A lot of that's been lost, Tom. Even in a lot of the analytic institutes, the reality of archetypes is being lost. In part, it's not in universities, so people are not respecting it anymore. Well, that was Jung. That's what he did in the 1916 and 1930 and 40. That's what they did back then. We're different today. And, some people want to say it's obsolete. I was actually at giving lectures, me and there was an analyst from Zurich, a very well-known analyst from Zurich, giving lectures on archetypes. Somebody said, "But archetypes, that's obsolete. You're going to try to say there's something prefigured?" And that's what my work has been about for 45 years now, prefigured dynamic. That's what Jung's work, von Franz's work. I'm not trying to tie myself into them, but I'm following their lead
Mm.
because they were right. And the other thing in terms of, why Jung lost favorites, I think it's even a bigger question, Tom. It's why have we lost favor with really having a deep, deep sense of investigation as to how things work and why they work? We're reduced to the lowest common denominator. What's your mother or father? Okay, it may have begun there, but you tell me what sustains it. There's something that would sustain that drama that went on between you and your father and mother, whatever these things are. People that have been orphaned. I've worked with a number of orphans in my career. It's uncanny. People are going to say it's not true. You can't be true, but how often their life is built around once they have the original condition, be orphaned, not wanted in a fetal environment, whatever. They repeat that pattern. Relationships, jobs, temporary situation. They fall in love with somebody and say, "Well, I love you, but I have to move away. I'm going away. I'm going to America, going to Australia." Well, what do you mean? We're just getting involved. Well, this is my plan all the way along. And it's not like they even chose it. It's not like you said, "Well, you knew it somewhere, right?" I could tell you, I can give you chapter and verse for our 45-year career. It happened in ways that one cannot explain by causality. So people don't want to look at this stuff. It's a lot of work. When I talk about prefigured dynamics, I've been studying. I know you're asking this question, but to segue into this, your opening question, why Jung has lost favor in some ways. To do it well takes a lot of work. When one studies for the final exam to be an analyst, often you take a year off from your training or to study. You study psychiatry, you study symbolism, you study mythology, fairy tale, psychopharmacology. world history, world religions. Why? Because they're all part of the underlying order of life. Well, what Jung was about, these prefigured dynamics, where it's going today more and more, and why it's more attractive to people. Tom, you tell me what you think about it. What's it feel like to you? It's personal. It's personal.
Mm,
Personal is important. But see, the essence of Jung's work was that all these images, while of course you care about it in your way, I care about it in my way. There is something about it that has existed since the beginning of time about that symbol that will, I'm not going to say override, but will probably be a stronger influence than what you have been through, what I've been through.
right, right. Well, I can sort of hear the pushback, right? Especially from the humanistic movement in psychology in the 60s and so on, because there's so much here which I think is actually really important for our time. Um, from Jung's work, regarding symbolism and archetypes and I suppose, coming back to the idea of the Nazis in the 1930s and so on, of ideas possessing human beings that really all speak to the constraints and the limitations that we have as human beings, and actually
That's a
our
great comment.
inability to control our destiny and our sort of our lack of ultimate freedom, which I actually think is really important because so many of the younger generations, obviously myself being a part of that in this day and age, have grown up in this world where the goal is to be happy and to live your life and to do whatever you want, and life is kind of like Netflix where we get all of these choices, and we really struggle with that because we aren't aware of the limitations that we have as human beings. So that's perhaps one reason why I think Jung is so important in this day and age.
That's a brilliant comment, really brilliant. I mean, when you realize that there's an archetype that begins to shape, there's not a lot of choice. And we live with the illusion that we're in control. One of the central motifs throughout mythology is we don't need the gods no more. We're better than the gods.
Mm,
From Agamemnon to Arachne and all, I mean, there are many stories. We don't need gods. We look at my daughter's most beautiful in the world. We're more powerful and all this stuff because you're touching on a major thing because from the beginning of time, there has been this relationship and strife between universal forces and personal forces, between eternal and temporal issues. Jung was really on the side of yes, we live in an eternal world. These instincts and these drives we have, or whatever, track it back. They've been with us from the beginning of time. You see, one of the reasons I think people are afraid of that is because they say, well, aren't my ideas more important? No, they're your ideas. Is your idea more important than you run into a snake in the woods and it's poisonous? You say, I don't think it's poison. Go ahead, take your boots off. Do whatever you want to do. I know it. I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my body. I feel it in my chakra, whatever. Okay, that's great. What a key word now. It's the objective.
mm,
Jung spoke about the objective psyche, and more in the literature is not there because you put your finger right on it. The minute you talk about objective, it's saying, well, there's something bigger than what I think or what I feel. Sorry, Charlie, there is. From dream work to complex. Have you ever been in the throes of a complex? And one of my mentors, Dr. Yom Kaufman, who's Israeli, he was a physicist before he became a Jungian analyst. He gave a great definition. He said a complex is a quantum of energy organized around a theme. Brilliant. I mean, he was a physicist, that's why he spoke like that. And then had to talk about light as packets of energy, right? When you're in the grip of it, you're in the grip of something. I mean, whether it's a rage, a blind rage, you're ready to kill, break every window around you. If you're in that erotic way, you're kissing windows, you're kissing the door jambs, you're kissing anything you see. When the longing for love comes in, you just find that arrow just indiscriminately goes here and there and there and there, goes all over the place. That's if one cannot admit that these things take over your life. Jung did see, he talked about it. Jung doesn't deserve some of that bad press. He doesn't. I mean, he's not perfect. He did a lot of things wrong too. But his understanding of these motive forces in the psyche that drive us, off the charts. in terms of individual and collective behavior. In terms of, again, your point, in terms of the limitation of consciousness. And I'll give you an image I think you'll especially appreciate. It's been said any given moment, say like a circle, image here, just a circle. There's 100 bits of information to be processed in that circle. You know what the mind, we talked about this once, I think, right? What does the mind generally take in? 7.4% of that field. So if you got 100% of the field available around that, it's taking in, of that pizza pie, you couldn't feed a bird with that 7.4%. It doesn't mean what we're capable of, but what we generally use. We're capable of processing much more than the 100% feel. But when we say, well, I think and I feel, good, that's wonderful. I want to hear what you think and feel about a dinner party, about a bottle of wine, about this kind of relationship and whatever. Okay, well, I want to hear. But there's something bigger.
Mm.
That's the assaultive nature that people feel when you mention archetypes. Oh, you're assaulting my dignity. You're telling me I don't know? You don't. Maybe somewhere deep down inside of you, the self does know, yeah. The self knows that, is this a person to marry or not? Or is this another repetition of abandonment? Is this another time you're going to be saying, but I thought we had great love. What happened? Why are we doing this? What happened now? But we're estranged. That's the thing. We're estranged from the self, from the core. And we are taken over by these complexes. And complexes, like I say, they are as strong as a magnetic field and force to take us over. This is why I've been talking about field theory for 40 years. Like the fields in the outer world, magnetic, electromagnetic, gravitational, whatever. And yeah, to human nature and to our false belief that we control our destiny, give up that illusion. We don't control our destiny. There is a destiny.
I suppose you sort of see why these movements took place. Sort of coming from through existentialism, Simone de Beauvoir's work, Second Sex. That need for autonomy and agency in one's life. I suppose to some degree it was quite necessary. I'm trying to look at what's going on in our culture at the moment. Again, is to really understand why Jung's ideas have actually really resurged so heavily. Um, could you speak to this idea, Michael, that perhaps we have gone too far with the humanistic positive psych movement, and perhaps there's why there's been this change in this I was reading research, no, was I reading research? I think I just saw a news article recently that said a vast majority of young men in Australia have become Christian again.
Become
Um,
what, Christian?
have become Christian again. Yeah, have adopted Christianity. I know there's been a big movement of Muslims in the Western world now. Again, speaking to this idea that people need a path, people need some constraint, and total freedom is too terrifying. I think Freud wrote about that. People don't want freedom because they're afraid of freedom, or something to that degree. Yeah, could you speak to some of those ideas?
Well, let's back up. I mean, again, you're hitting a very important piece in terms of, why the movement, why the shift? We'll
Mm,
get to that part of the question. We began, if you look at kind of the beginning of history, we have an animated world. The world was animated by the water was animated, the mountains were animated. You pray to the mountain, pray to the waterfall, pray to the well, whatever. Okay, they were all sacred, and we believed in this. We believed that there was something, some presence, something organizing, something spiritual back then that organized the world. And while much of that is really true, is another piece. When you began with the scientific, or the kind of making a big jump in history, but I think in terms of your question. So in the beginning, it was animated, it was spiritual, it was religious, and all those things. And that was our answer. What God said. Eventually, we got to God, from animated to God. The God said, and what God wanted us, and God wanted us to do, what God is punishing, whatever. With the advent of the scientific revolution, what was seen as animistic suddenly became causal dynamics, causality. Well, the fish didn't just come, the migration didn't start right now because we all prayed, the whole community prayed, 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 it came. And that's what happened. Well, there is a yearly migration. I'm sorry. There's a yearly migration and you can chart it. Oh my God, there's this eclipse. Oh my God. So somebody came and they prayed for and there's the sun and the moon. Well, if you look on the chart, you get your computer out, you can calculate, blah, blah, blah. So what was an animated world became a scientific world dominated by laws of causality, a mechanistic causal world. And so it was a big shift. And, with any shift, the word's entotheodromia. I don't know if you know that word. Entotheodromia means things fall into their opposite. So what was animistic, what was all spiritual, the migration happened because we prayed, okay? The scientists would say, no. So from that to excuse me, a 180 shift. So it's not that. It's all quite calculated.
Mm, mm,
It's all quite predictable. And with that, it went 180 from over to the scientific revolution. With the scientific revolution, when we say we don't need them, they're gods no more, you could see sort of the history where it's coming from. It's part of the movement from animism to scientism. Okay. What's needed now, really, is look, we have wonderful science. We have, I mean, I'm sure if any of us were sick, anybody you love is sick, you hope to God there's a great surgeon or whatever to do the work. We've all, while we rail against medicine and all, we want to say terrible thing. Yeah, you got your kid who's sick. You better stop railing. You better pray to God and find your way to that great surgeon that can save your kid's life.
mm, mm,
Stop the nonsense at some point. However, with these shifts, we then throw out the proverbial baby with the bathwater. It is still animistic. How do we know the migration wasn't successful this year? Maybe there was some prayer. Yes, it's predictable. Things happen, no, when the migration doesn't occur for different reasons. It's not only because someone built a dam 20 miles upstream and the salmon can't make it. Something else happened. But the integration is really has been missing. And where a lot of people go on the side of animism and spirituality, it's all spiritual. It's all this. Let me just throw the I Ching thing. It's all that. Let's throw caution to the wind and just pray. It goes too far because we have discovered a lot, but that doesn't do away with the fact there's something else. Especially when I was a 72-year-old man, I see more than ever the power of these self-organizing tendencies. I remember I told a class years ago when my son was born, I'm going back now 32 years, right? I said, I don't think sex has much to do with making babies. And they said, Dr. Ford, I think you really lost it. I think you're drinking too much wine or something, or you got
yeah.
too mystical. And of course, I was kidding. But I said, you really going to tell me from that, however conception occurs, I know there are many ways today, you're going to tell me that that way of conception created this new life? It's not just biology. It's more than that. And you realize the act, however, let's say the traditional intercourse and conception that way, that, and this is the stuff I love, and I think it's part of your question. That act was necessary to activate something that was preformed. It's like, talk about analogy, it's like turning a light switch. There's light, there's energy in their wall to get it on. There's energy in this thing. You got to turn a button somewhere to turn it on. All the dynamics responsible for that child, for that fetus, they're
Mm,
all prefigured. You see what I mean? They're prefigured. But it takes something to start it. Okay.
mm.
So what do you say the major part of the question is, what does it take for us right now to appreciate that? Is that really what you're asking? I think it's humility. It's humility. When I've worked with students around the world now, it's been a wonderfully rich career where the early youngins would say, okay, well, what about this image? What about this is water, okay? Well, what about this wine bottle, say it's filled with wine? And you may say, well, yeah, I get very sad because my parents are alcoholic.
Mm.
Every night, want a glass, honey? Yeah, have a glass. Have a sip. You know what? I have a third, and then you know, that's your experience. It doesn't end there though. Or did you begin there? Because your experience of this is temporal. It shaped your life. It created probably a lot of traumas, maybe a lot of problems with relationships. However, the wine wasn't created to ruin your life. The wine wasn't created to make people drunk. Inebriation is part of the process, a little lightheaded, whatever, celebratory. But it takes a humility to say, okay, look, excuse me, I know what it means for me. What else could it mean that's bigger than me? You realize how spiritual that is ultimately? What have we known from the beginning of time about that wine bottle? Was it always about your mom and dad throwing things at each other because they're both drunk and who's on the floor? You wake up in the morning, get ready for school, and you see your mom and dad lying on the floor because of the damn wine bottle. And again, it's not minimizing the individual experience at all. Individual experience is wrapped into an archetypal, objective set of experiences.
Well, you mentioned science before and the scientific revolution. And I think it's given us a lot in terms of how the world is, and how it's structured from a physical standpoint, and even now, to a lesser degree, based upon what we don't know, with quantum theory and so on. But it hasn't given us a whole lot in terms of how to act or how to be. We know what is to a large extent, but we don't know how to be. And I think there's a real loss in our
I'm missing
culture
one word. How to what? I'm missing a word.
in terms of how to be,
How to
in
be,
terms
how to
of
be. Yeah,
how to live, how to act, morality, ethics, all this sort of thing. And I think, this idea that there are images and energies that really govern a human being's life to a large extent. I sort of get this image in my mind that the more you understand Jung and even philosophy, the more you sort of recognize that there is a flow to life. And if you can sort of navigate that river, it's going to set you up for success, I suppose, to use that word.
it's a totally different way of living.
Mm,
A
mm,
totally different way. When I say to you, Tom, look, I understand what this means. Imagine Tom or Mary, whomever it might be, but that's your experience. To then ask or help the client or the individual say, okay, ask the question. What else is involved that I'm not aware of?
yeah,
Not just my personal history,
yeah.
but what else is known about it? I'll give you a great example in a minute. This is where the work is really essentially spiritual. Spirituality from what we could tell. I mean, no one knows what any of this stuff really is, but it's a humility. When you get down on your knees and you say, "There's something bigger than me, something so much bigger that I can't control." I'm going back to the early place that I can't control. I'll give you a great example. We had a student in our program years ago. We have a 2-year training program here, an archetypal pattern analysis. It's not just clinical; it's for many walks of life. And one of our students came to me, she was writing a thesis, and she said, I'm kind of stuck. I said, "Wait, let me help. See if I can help." And she said she had a patient that had over 200 dreams of an orca whale. I never heard of that in my life, 200 dreams about one image.
Mm,
And and of course you do, well, what do you think and what do you feel? You can't just stop at circumambulating what you think and feel because you're gonna if all you know is red wine, this wine from Italy, wine from Spain, whatever. That's all you know. Okay, that's great, but there's more. Australian wine is fantastic. New Zealand wine is great. South African wine. Okay, but that becomes your whole spectrum.
mm,
So I said right away, okay, look, you got the association. We know what the patient thinks and feels, which is meaningful. Now, here's what I think you need to do before we have our next appointment. Call a marine biologist. Excuse me. Yeah. We need to find out if the unconscious is giving you this image from the self, from the archaic unconscious. Why don't we figure out what it means? Not by just circumambulating Italian wine, Spanish wine, Italian wine. There's more. Okay. Get a much wider piece. She said, okay. She said, I'll humor you with this. And anyway, she called and she came back. She said, you're not going to believe this, Michael. I said, I probably will believe it. I don't know the facts, but she said she found a guy or a man or woman, I don't remember what it was, a marine biologist that specialized in orchids, the number of calls that she found somebody that knew orchids. What they said was the orca whale is the one living creature in the world that absorbs the greatest number of toxins from any living creature.
Wow.
Number one. Number one. It absorbs it. Number two, the male has no way of getting rid of, discharging the toxins. The female does. You know how the female gets rid of the toxins? Gets pregnant.
Mm,
Passes the toxins on to the fetus.
mm.
Thus, a very high mortality, infant mortality rate in orca whales. Many of the babies die because of this. I said, do you realize what we're dealing with right now? No, let's go slow because this is very powerful to what we're getting at here. To a lot of your questions, why it's been difficult, why criticism of Jung and all this. I think this gets us into that. She's saying, come on, Michael. You're trying to tell me that even though the dreamer knows nothing about this, the dreamer didn't know anything about this part of it. The therapist, my student, didn't know anything about it. I, the supervisor, knew nothing about it. You're going to say it affects the dreamer? Undoubtedly. This is such a profound story because it's saying that it was a female patient that she's become. You know what a sin eater is? The term sin eater.
No.
It's from the domain of the scapegoats. The scapegoats are all about an
Ah.
expiation of guilt and transgressions. Let me get rid of what I did. So you tie it around the goat, you get rid of it, okay? Then you have confession, which is another version. And then you had the sin eater. The sin eater was a person, a part of a tribe. Imagine we're all here. They've got 50 little teepees here, whatever, okay? But there's one person a mile away, sin eater. So you did something wrong. You cheated, you stole a couple of eggs from somebody, you took some milk from whatever, with looking, maybe you flirted with somebody, whatever. You go to the sin eater and say, I transgressed it. And they eat up your sins. You realize what this is? This image of the orca is a living example of the sin eater archetype. It absorbs the toxins for humanity. It's saying the patient that you have that had 200 dreams of this one animal, not the great white, the great whales or the blue whales. There was one whale. It's saying this dreamer has been the sin eater for her family and the culture. The work is going to be understanding how she absorbed the transgression. I mean, people, what I mean by sin. What are the transgressions in her family? Whatever the parents were involved or whatever they did that hurt people, hurt each other, whatever, they passed it on to her. And she took it in.
Yep. Yep.
And Plato makes his comment. Plato writes, he says, whenever there's evil in the air, anybody around us going to breathe is taking the evil into their own body. So we become evil to them in some ways. And you get evil in the sense of transgression.
Right.
See how powerful, is that a powerful story?
It is, and it speaks to coming full circle, this idea that, Jung sort of started to understand what was going on with the Nazi regime and sort of recognized that a lot of these individuals were possessed by a sort of cultural shadow force,
Exactly.
right? And I think Heidegger was, I don't know too much about Heidegger, but I think he was sort of part of it to some degree, but then sort of moved away. But even he spoke to this idea of, authenticity. Having constraints and limitations too, and we're sort of claimed by our authenticity, which isn't far away from this idea. This is kind of where I wanted to segue now, Michael, in that we are sort of born with some sort of role that we're supposed to play in life. Now I know that that's a very limited way of conceptualizing this, and I'd really like to understand what that means from a Jungian perspective, and even just from your own personal perspective. But because there's so much we can't control, who we're born to, parents, the culture that we're born into, things that happen to us, injuries, sports injuries being one for me, all this sort of stuff. It really doesn't give us a whole lot. Sort of see this idea as like a flower in a pot, where the flower can grow and it can actualize itself, but it doesn't have a whole lot of control over where it is in the garden. So how much sunlight it receives, the weather, the size of the pot, how big the roots, how far down the roots can extend to. And I think what we're touching on here now, especially with that orca dream image, is how much of the self, the capital S self, is really guiding us towards living a certain way. And then as a result, is it up to us to find out more about these forces that are guiding us so that we can live out our role in a way.
I think that's the goal of any real life and analysis in particular.
Mm, mm,
I'm hesitating because it's such a powerful thing you're bringing up and something I care about very deeply, especially as you get older, because we get less time. We have less time to do it, to do what we're meant to do. Is there a forza del destino, the force of destiny? I think there's no question whether there's a really force of destiny in life. And the word destinati in Italian, in Latin, it's not about it's okay. You're destined to be to do podcasts, or you're destined to be a baker, whatever. It's not that. The destinati is to be oriented in a certain way in life.
mm,
Okay, obviously you're about a communicator and about you know expanding ideas, expanding consciousness, and bringing it to people. That's an archetypal role. And that's who knows, but it may be a big part of what your destiny is about. It's uncovering that, it's finding a way to uncover that I think is one of the greatest gifts in life. And many times it takes a mentor. Someone, not just being assigned like in school. Tom, you go to room 101 and Mike, you go to room 404 to meet your mentor. Somebody that you really, really respect and who merits and deserves your respect because of who they are and what they have, who they are and how they live their life. And they become a model for this. And it becomes different then because then a lot of what you do in the analysis, it's not only about moms and dads and all that kind of stuff. It's what is the spirit moving through you?
mm, mm.
How do you realize every time you move to the right, you stop in that spirit time? I mean, for instance, right? Every time you engage in such and such and there's this, you get the flavor out of the sauce. When you do this to the sauce, you're getting the flavor. When you really sweat the onions, you're getting the essence of that flavor, the sweetness coming out. When you put them in for a minute and then you take them out, what are you doing? You're not getting anything. You get onions, okay, onion flavor, but you're not getting the real essence of it. Okay. Again, I would say the most important, and I don't think I've ever said it publicly before like this, but you're pushing with great questions. Perhaps the most important goal of any meaningful therapy, of any therapy, would be to find what is that calling somebody has and help them live it.
So how do we do
Can I
that?
just say can I interrupt you 1 second? A very brief piece.
Sure.
I worked with somebody years ago, and they came and they had a very nice life. They're in the business world and food service and different things. They had a good enough life. And after 3 sessions, there was nothing going on. And usually you kind of dig in right away. You could smell the sauce when it's cooking right away, right? You get a flavor, sense. There's nothing. And I asked her in the third session, I said, I got to ask you something. Kind of uncharacteristic of me doing it this way, really uncharacteristic. I said, what is it about you in writing? Because she mentioned a couple of books and reading, how she was reading this book or that book, but nothing seemed to significant. I said, what about you in writing? She said, what? And you know what, you in writing? She said, I'm leaving right now. I'm leaving. I may not come back next week. Okay. I don't know what the hell I did. And she left about 30, maybe 30 minutes into the 50-minute session. So she left pretty much half of it. And she said, I may see you next week. And of course, I'll pay you, but that's not the issue. But I don't know if I want to come back. She did come back. And she said, I've never told anybody in my life the following. Since I was 5 years old, and now I think she's like maybe 55 at the time when this happened, I wanted one thing in life, to be a writer. I never gave you permission to know that about me. I'm pissed. I'm angry at you. I hate you right now in some ways today. And I thank you that you saw it. Thus began the next 4 years of analysis. And a person that had not even finished, maybe finished high school, went back to get a 2 year degree college. We have 2 year degrees in America called associates. Then I said, she said, okay, I did. I went back to school. I said, you're just beginning this process. And the dreams all the way through, and the synchronicity is unbelievable.
Mm.
She walked into a bookstore, and there's her favorite author of all time giving a reading. How could this happen? She walked in another bookstore or whatever, and somebody said, "Hey, would you do a book review for this? Why are you asking me?" No one thought of her as a reader. No, incredible articulation. It's out of the blue, right? You follow the bird,
Mm.
the breadcrumbs. So I finished. I got my 2 year degree. I said, "No, you're beginning. Great, wonderful. Now you go get the next stage, get a 4 year degree." Well, I'll go to community college. No, there's a very, very illustrious, very wonderful college down the street, maybe about an hour away, that's renowned for having great writers. I can't get in. That's Ivy League. I'll see you next week. Excuse me, I just said I can't. I said, I'll see you next week. Anyway, he kept on going and going and going. And you know what finally happened? She get after about 3 years, she goes back. She gets a degree. The last year, she said, "Hey, I can tell you funny things happening in school right now." This is the destiny piece you're asking about, okay? She said an announcement came out to all of us in the literature department. She was a student getting a BA in literature and writing, that there's a summer program in Oxford. In Oxford, right?
Mm.
And they're only accepting like 8 people. Isn't that funny? I said, "Did you send your application in there?" No. Oh, stop it. Come on. They only take 8 people out of this college. What are the biggest I don't want to mention a name. The major ones here in the East Coast. I said, "I'll see you next week." So, and she comes back. "Just to make you happy, I did it." I sent an application. I said, "To where?" You see, I wanted to hear her say the words. "Where? To McDonald's restaurant or to a four-star Michelin restaurant? Who do you got? To where? Yeah, Oxford. Oxford. You realize that's the growl. That's the goal of the growl for a writer. But she did it, and her life was different. And somehow I thank the gods on that one that I sniffed that one out. Not
Mm.
all cases like that, but that was an example where you realize she had a destiny, and somehow it was a telling it, expressing it by way of her sensitivity for stories. Okay, and we got it. And so I think it is probably one of the most important parts of life that somebody can help you with that.
To help you sort of find your purpose, to help you claim your authenticity, right? So if someone's listening to this now, Michael, and is in that place, so they're aware enough that they're experiencing sort of existential guilt, perhaps. I'm reading Emmy Van Derzen at the moment, and she talks about how existential guilt is this idea that the duty that we have to live our lives and give our gifts to the world hasn't been taken on board yet. We haven't done what we're supposed to do, and we feel the existential guilt as a result of that. If someone's listening to this right now and they're aware that there is a hole in their lives, but they just can't quite grasp it and they don't understand, what are some things that they can do to start to go inwards and try to figure out what their destiny is?
It's funny. It came in a session today. It answered part of the answer to your question. My patient has been through a lot of international struggles and wars, living through wars and all that. And anyway, she said, "I've had this whisper." What are we talking about, whisper? She said, "Something is whispering." Again, it's interesting. It's about writing for her. She said, "Something is whispering, right?" And it's coming out of nowhere in the analysis. And that's what she's got to follow. I mean, so somewhere in us, we know that thing, maybe you love, like my father. My father died 105 years old. He spoke 4 dialects. He was a great cook. His father was a great cook from Italy. And he was most at home in the kitchen. And he was with his soul at that point. And it takes somebody having a sense of, or maybe somebody helping. Hey, you know what, Tom, when you're in front of the mic there, you're with the you. Something's different about you. You got to have a sense of those places. So in terms of people listening, what's whispering in your ear?
Mm.
Questo massaggio da Dio. It's a message from God to hear what it is. And it's the other part of your question, which is you didn't ask, which I didn't know was there. What are the consequences of not listening?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That I think is the root of probably the greatest depression and sadness in life.
Mm. Mm.
I'll be transparent. I struggle with that because I've had a big career, a really, very big career. And running this, we have 46 countries involved with the CC right now. It's wonderful. At the end of a long day, I don't really want to sit down and read and write. I want a glass of wine and go to bed. You know, I love writing. Writing, so it's interesting. It's two stories. It's really, they're not my stories. They're by patient, but I'm especially sensitive to that because as well as researching and studying this stuff, I also, some other part of me gets expressed when I write, and I'm not doing enough of it. And you're always off kilter. You're off.
You
And
just
when you do it, it's like things are even when it's a tough write. So I remember somebody you do 5 drafts, 8 drafts. I've done for the writer for Italy this year. I did 15 drafts of it, and I got it. I finally got it, I think. But even when you don't have it, it doesn't matter. You know you're working on what you're supposed to be working on.
yeah.
You're
Yeah.
probably going to get that meal to taste like the way it needs to taste. You did get the best flavors out of the basil, the best flavors out of the shrimp, whatever. Okay, and so even when you don't have it, you know you're on the right path, and there's a sense of coming home. I mean, for me, there's not for me and me, individual, and also as an analyst and teacher, right? One image that I hold really dear is putting your head down at night, saying, "I'm safe and I'm home."
I
That's
love
what a
that.
lot of this is about, and there's a way that you feel it, and it's a lot of sometimes. No, not this version. No, don't add this to the shrimp sauce. It's not too good. That's not enhancing the flavor. No, that wine's not going to go with this. But and then, oh, then it opens up.
Yes.
It opens up, and I mean, it's still tough. I mean, this is no cakewalk. Some people have said I'm dark in how I look at things. One of my colleagues has said, "You're not dark at all, Michael. You just say things people don't talk about, like the consequences here."
Mm.
But when you help somebody understand, especially as they age, I mean, terrible analogy, but think about it. As I get older, I'd have a tooth extracted recently. Take care of your teeth. I took good care, but it's part of aging. But I tell my grandkids, "What, hey, Dave, take care of your teeth. You don't want to lose your teeth." Grandpa lost his teeth. My father lost teeth when he was 100.
Mm.
But
Mm.
the point is, take care of what you have and listen to that whisper, no matter how subtle. I should be advanced. What are you kidding me? You really going to dedicate even more time to these podcasts? What are you kidding me? You're not making money out of it, probably. You're not getting rich out of it. It doesn't matter. A lot of young kids today, another part of one of your questions. So, well, what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with this training? Where am I going to go with it? And people come to me, they want to start the training. What am I going to get at the end of it? Where am I going to go? Where do you make money? I say, well, yeah, of course we want that. When Jung did the Red Book, he wrote it at one point, and remember the Red Book? Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, what I write about is our experiences. It's not stories. I'm trying to capture it in words what I've been through. And he said, I never wanted to do this. I had to. I was compelled to do it. Ticket, or do I go Thursday? Somebody hands you the ticket, says you go or you're dead. This is you got to do it. This is your life, man.
Mm.
And then hopefully, hope to God you get some people on the journey to come with you and to help you. I had one mentor like that for 30 years. He saw things I would have never thought about in my life. And I owe this to him. I owe a lot of my life to him.
Tell me about the Assisi Institute. This is something that you and I were discussing when we caught up last week. I wanted to make sure that we had a lot of time to dedicate to the Assisi Institute. It sounds really interesting.
Well, 1989 was when when the whole thing began, but in 1987 I made my pilgrimage to Italy. Our family was we're 100% Italian. Half the family is from Palermo, Sicily, and I made my journey there. But I combined the journey with I always wanted to go to Assisi, Italy. St. Francis was my patron saint. I even went to St. Francis Prep High School in Brooklyn.
I was wondering
Uh,
if it was about St. Francis of Assisi, if it had that sort of connection to it.
that was a big part. Also, I went there because I was a good athlete, and it's one of the premier sports schools in the city.
Mm.
So premier. I went as a good athlete, play basketball, and I get on the court feeling kind of confident. Look up the first day, and 6'8", 6'9", twice my size. But anyway, so I made my pilgrimage to Assisi, and it was more than I could have ever imagined. And I remember the day. I was sitting on a stone wall overlooking the area is called Umbria, the Umbrian Valley, which is really quite beautiful. And I heard these words out of nowhere, God's honest truth, out of nowhere. You got to come back here and do a conference on the confluence of matter and spirit. Like, who said that? What does confluence mean?
Right.
Matter and spirit. What are you talking about? I don't know what it means. I mean, I was going to school, the manual training. I was already doing that stuff. It's not like I don't know that world, but I didn't know those words.
Mm, mm.
And I don't want to do conferences. I didn't care about that stuff. I didn't care. And then I went back. I was teaching at the university. I had like four jobs, teaching university and having a small practice and commuting to New York for analytic training, all that. And I talked to the university. He said, well, what about it? What do you, but why don't we do a program about what? I said, it's about the confluence matter of spirit. Can you describe any more? I said, no. They were like, And then they said, look, the students really like your work. You have a good following. And so let's do it. And they did it the first year and we were off and running. That was 1989. And the confluence matter of spirit, we had physicists and theologians and writers and biologists and whatever, ethologists, not ethnology, ethology, the study of animal, all of them there. And in time, we realized we were looking at archetype, the primacy of the archetype and the ever presence of archetypal patterns from film to music. And it kept growing and kept growing. And then we started programs here in the States. So the maiden voyage was in Assisi, Italy, literally in Assisi, Italy. And it could not be a more perfect, talk about destiny, more perfect spot. Assisi is all about the confluence of matter and spirit. St. Francis, that was his life. He struggled with matter because he wanted spirit. Struggled with spirit because he wanted matter, but that was his world. That
Mm.
struggle like that. I'm not. He may not have even ever resolved it, but that's not the point. But he was in that struggle, and so we kept on building more programs. And then I started the Assisi Institute here in the States. And in time, I was able to articulate. But for the first 6 years, people say, "Oh, I want to sign up for the program. What's it about?" Oh, it's a conflict matter of spirit. Okay, that's great. Can you go on, be more descriptive? What happened? They say, "I don't know. I can't not tell you anymore." So that went on for 6 years, but I finally had some way to articulate. And here we are today. So what we do now is like I said, 46 countries. We're offering different programs and we have participants. Where we have one training program for people that want to be archetypal pattern analysts. It's not an analytic program. I mean, from your walk of life, we have writers and attorneys and filmmakers and consultants and therapists, whatever, that want to really study the whole world of archetypes and patterns and symbols and learning what are some of the constituent parts of a pattern. How do you begin to read a pattern? What enhances pattern? What begins to make a pattern stagnate? How do you know when patterns are outdated? Oh, this is what we've been doing now for 35 years or so. And it's wonderful. We started the program here in the States and we began slowly, kind of trickle people from other countries. And actually, so we had started a whole training program in Latin America. and we do that in Spanish, obviously. And then we started a program in, I have to say, the former Soviet Union. I think it's okay to use that language, right? In the former Soviet Union for the Russian-speaking people. And we
Mm,
have students now from throughout Russia, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Belarus, Ukraine, and Ukrainian students with the Russian. They're in the same class.
mm.
And we've had up to 250 people attend lectures I've given for the Russian-speaking audience. We have a whole thing starting up right now in Bali and throughout Indonesia
Mm.
with the Romanian. I'm going to Romania before Italy this year. I just finished a letter again today. They invited me a couple of times to come. It's just a wild ride. And what I love is this is not about the easy way of doing it. Oh, just go inside, tell me what you think and feel. That's part of it. That's part of it. But that's not going to get you to this part of the orca. I'm sorry. Why did Jung spend so many years studying things like sulfur? If you just say, well, when my mother made eggs, it smelled like sulfur in the house. So anyway, this is what we study. We look at the ontology of this, and we bring a truly interdisciplinary lens to this. And if you look at my career as being kind of symbolic of what one does with this, obviously I've been an analyst for many years, supervising. I teach at different institutes. I've worked in the film industry. I've worked on probably 5 or 6 movies and TV programs and all that, and I love it
Mm.
as a pattern analyst, reading storylines. We can talk about that sometime if you like. It's a wonderful work.
Well, that's
Um,
probably where it's most obvious, Jung's ideas and how they sort of influenced Joseph Campbell, who therefore influenced Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and
exactly,
the
exactly,
classic hero's journey, and
exactly.
you have to you have to sort of sit back and just go, well, why does that exact same story, with its different sort of specificities and different, storylines and so on, why does that speak to so many different people cross-culturally? There must be something very deep within us that just sees that as an image of itself.
Yeah.
It's not very hard to make that leap.
Von Franz talked about that. She said, number one, a great phrasing. She said, archetypes are nature's constant. I love it.
Mm,
Nature's constant. And she said, take stories. I don't know. Well, you're young. I grew up in one book we all read was A Little Engine That Could. I think I could. I think I could. I think, and I read it now to my grandson.
yeah.
There's a big train. Oh, would you? And the little train says, "Would you help us? We broke down." No, I don't take little people like you. And then another train came, a smaller one. After different ones came, and they rejected offering help. And well, I'm not that strong, but I think I can. I think I can help you because we are clowns and everything. We got presents for all the kids on the other side. We really want to deliver them before Christmas or whatever. And I think I could. And I chug a chug. I think I could. I think I could. And she said, the reason we want to hear that story unaltered. I knew I could. I could do Brooklyn. Hey, I knew I could. I had that done. I knew I could. Don't ever question me, man. I got that covered. I got it, man. Can I get it up? Can I do that train? Can I do that train? Robert Dinner. You think I can? You think I can't do that train? Get the hell out of here. Of course I can do it. She said that the kid would never want to hear that story. It wants the original because it resonates with an archetypal core in us. The hope, whether it's David and Goliath, whatever, that we have to live with some doubt.
Mm.
And one of the unsung heroes in the Bible is Thomas, the doubter. He did doubt. Come on, you really died, you came back, you know. But it's that beautiful humility. I want to help you, but I don't know if I could do it. You come to analysis. I don't know if I can help you. I hope I can. I hope I can do something. I hope I can. I hope I can. So she says it's because there's a receptor in the psyche for archetypal stories. They just did a remake of West Side Story. You know about West Side Story?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I love that. I love the
Yeah,
original.
beautiful.
When you're a jet all the way
Yes,
from your
that's right.
cigarette to your left.
To
And
your left,
anyway,
dying day.
Spielberg did a remake of it.
I didn't know that. Wow.
People say it bombed.
Mm,
I've seen a couple of like YouTube, a couple of scenes you could see. They talk Brooklyn, it don't work. It
mm,
doesn't capture because it's gone too far from the original. Even though a lot of the things were similar, it doesn't capture the same spirit of what was there. I mean, there was a time when in the 50s when all the immigrants are coming together in New York and hey, you're Puerto Rican, you're Italian, you're a Mick, you're Irish. Hey, and that was real. That was real back then. It wasn't caught in the original.
Mm, mm,
The pathos between Maria and Tony,
right.
you know.
Right, but
So that's
even the theme in that idea, and Romeo and Juliet, when the culture is engaged in this battle, the battle kills the most innocent, loved, fragile parts of its selves. That's the same sort of story there, and it's
exactly.
true. It's true
Yeah.
within ourselves as well as within our culture. If we have
Yeah.
these neuroses and these complexes and these you know intra psychic battles. Um, we're going to kill inevitably a part of ourselves that we actually love the most, the treasure the most, is the most fragile, the most innocent.
Well put. I mean, it is a retelling of the Romeo and Juliet story. Yeah. Love Story was a telling of that too, in many ways, right? And it's not because Romeo and Juliet, because Romeo and Juliet is telling an eternal story, which is
Mm.
you just articulated it perfectly. Yeah, it's part of it.
Yeah.
And von Franz said that's what the psyche it knows that storyline. It doesn't want to hear the other story. If you want to do a different story, don't call it Romeo and Juliet. Call it something else. But don't even say it's the same storyline. Don't insult the archetype. Don't try to. I can't think of other words. Don't eclipse the archetypal. And that's what I think. If Assisi is about one major thing, it's all about the primacy of the archetype and archetypal pattern and learning to work with it like a midwife. How do you understand the images? So if you have the dream of the orca, here's what you got to do. I'm gonna tell you, we don't know what it means, but here's what go out and check it out. The koala, the kangaroo, whatever it's gonna be, find out. It's not just a little thing in the zoo fighting people in a boxing ring. Well, it's crazy.
Yes, that's right.
The fact that the male holds babies, I mean, that's a part of it. The seahorse, right? The male holds a baby, right?
Mm, mm.
There is an archetypal motif. The seahorse is part of that. The father has a very important role in this.
Michael, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I think, one of the reasons why I was so eager to talk to you was because, as you can probably tell, um, this is something I'm really interested in and engaged with at the moment. This idea of understanding and even enjoying and welcoming the limitations that we have, as human beings, how much we can't do, which therefore tells us what we can do, what we should do, what we were sort of born to do in a sense. And I think stories, symbolism, archetypes, the images that speak to us the most, um, give us a frame of reference that help us sort of navigate our lives because there's just too many potential pathways out there. And it's so helpful to recognize that, well, that wasn't actually meant to be me. That wasn't meant to be me. Thank God I tried that because now I know that wasn't meant to be me. You use your red wine analogy. Thank God I tried Shiraz because now I recognize I'm absolutely a Pinot Noir guy, or whatever it is, for example, right? Um, if you could, final question I have for you, Michael, is looking back on your life now as you're sort of reflecting and moving into to a newer stage. Um, what are you sort of aware of now that really was your legacy or were the gifts that you were meant to give to the world? What made you feel most alive in your career and what are you sort of most proud of?
I think in many ways, what my work has been about for over the 40 something years now is really building on the genius of Jung and von Franz's work about the primacy of archetypes, the power of it, and really building on that and saying we back then we heard some of it, but to realize the absolute magnificence, power, malevolence, benevolence, all of it, but to be humble in the face of that stuff and to learn as much as we can about what this is, what these things are. Early signs. I wrote a whole book on initial conditions that Jung was capturing the initial conditions of the uprising. Could you imagine if we could do that more often.
Mm.
The uprising of psychopathy in government and deal with it, whatever level, our own lives. I mean, look, I, we have a whole module in the training program. There are five different modules, six modules. One is on initial conditions, well, threshold experiences. And students, I might go, I talk about it from systems theory, all of that stuff, right? I love it. What's why? Why for you? I said, and being really pretty honest, I said, without getting into details, I said, it's about regret and survival. I wish to God I knew some of these initial conditions years ago. I would have avoided a lot of trouble. How often do we say, how did I not see that?
Yeah.
How did what the heck happened? I mean, I'm pretty bright, but I pick up things. I'm from the streets from Brooklyn. You're pretty. You got to be a survivor. How did I miss someone like that? Of course, it's archetype. I got that, but and survival. Every animal survives by virtue of reading the patterns in nature accurately.
Mm.
It's no distortion,
Mm.
unless it's brain damage. So, I think the legacy I have is. And I'll give what a lot of people have said. They said, Michael, they kind of kid around. They look at my hands, right? They said, those are not the hands of a doctor. They said, you get the hands of a farmer, and you can see over here, look, you know what that is? Let me put the light on you. Hold on a
Yeah, yeah,
second.
sure. Is it a
Uh,
piano?
This is one of my joys and part of the legacy.
Oh,
It's a
wow. Look at
hundred,
that.
it's 100-year-old wood cook stove.
Oh,
And there's a
wow.
door, the oven door's right there. I cook with it, I heat with it. You see my pizza things up there?
Yes, I was just going to say. Yes, yes.
And what people have said about this is, you bring a lot of scholarship to this stuff, to the work, but also a lot of warmth and compassion. And many people that heard my lecture say, "My God, you have a lot of passion for this stuff." But it's not just if it was only passion, that would be an insult. It's passion combined with having done a lot of years of research and study. I don't mean statistics but from image and all this stuff, right? A lot of years of that. And I still care. It still moves me. It still moves me. Talk about fields. I mean, in a movie, in a field, in your life, what got you into that thing? What eclipsed your discernment that you got in a situation now you say, how do I get out of it? Help me get out of it. Help me understand what the hell I did to get out of it. I'm suffering like a dog, but they look so beautiful. Oh my God.
Mm, mm,
I love that. I love all that stuff.
mm.
And then seeing now how in God's name this got into 46 countries. We have no marketing team. We don't know much about social media. You can help us with that. You learn about social media and all of that. Um, but it's a good feeling to have affected some lives. And I am always thankful for the person that helped me. Dr. Yoram Kaufman, I mentioned earlier from Israel.
Mm.
My mentor for 30 years. He took me under his wing. And it was just tough. It was kind of tough love. There was no teddy bear stuff there. But he saw something and he wanted to do whatever he could to bring it out. Say, no, no, not that door. Yes, run to that door. That's where and somehow I
There's your
followed.
journey. There's your adventure over there. It's that door, not that one.
Exactly.
Mm.
And he had his sense. So it's been a wonderful ride.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
again,
And still more rides to continue here, 72 is the new 42, I think is what they say.
you tell that to my body when I
Yeah. That's right. Michael, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find you, and if they want to learn more about the Assisi Institute, what are some links?
go on the internet. There are two Assisi Institutes. One, I think, in Rochester, New York, which is not us. It's all about a spiritual place. I mean, we're spiritual too, but it's one with my name. It's the CC Italy program. And go on that. And we have a lot of upcoming programs. Like right now, I think coming out next week, the announcement about Italy this year. We go to CC Italy every year. We have two parts. We're going to go to one of the islands in Italy called Giglio in the Tuscan archipelago. So you learn about that. We have a lot of clinical programs. We have fairy tale seminars, a lot of fairy tale seminars. Starting up now is the advanced and master. And the big one, yeah, is the training program, and it's all on the internet. But what I would say is, if you're interested, write in, so I'll talk to you directly because it's my stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I think I'm in the best place to talk about any of this with somebody because I still care about it. I love it, and I go, I'll be honest. I've had people come and want to give me the check right now. I want to sign up. I say, you know what? From our contact and our discussion, I don't think this is right for you or us. It's a lot of money on the table. I said, I would love to take your check, but it's not. This doesn't seem to be the right match.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but write to us, write an email to us. When you look at the web thing, a pop-up comes up to sign your name on it, so you get all of our mailings and all that. So do that, and then write to me. Be happy to.
And I think, for another podcast, it'd be fantastic to just dedicate it sort of whole entirely to fairy tales and mythology and really get into the crux. I mean, there's so many different ideas, right? We spoke very briefly about the hero's journey and how that's in Harry Potter and Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Frozen and everything. But the growth of the anima in us, or the animus, the masculine feminine dynamics in Snow White, and there's so many things that we could discuss there, Michael. So I'd love to do another show with you.
I would be happy to.
Yeah,
I'd be happy. It'd be a joy.
beautiful. Well, thank you so much once again for joining me. It was an honor.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.